First snow day of my entire life, and I didn't even have school today.
Sucks. But you did have work, so you did get out of work.
That's true. I did get out of work. That was nice. I mean, it was nice to hang out here all day. It was nice to kind of just have all that free time, except for it wasn't really that free because I ended up spending it doing homework and running around for my million school projects that I'm in.
Yeah. And I was just working all day, so.
Yeah, but it was good. I mean, it's good to know that now I don't have to do that later on in the week, at least.
I also just like looking at your face. So.
You get stir crazy in here?
Yeah. All the time.
I would too. I really like being alone, but I also really like being around people.
Yeah. I think there are benefits to being alone for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's, all day, every day, I just don't really like it as much. I also am the same way, but I think I'm more selective with the type of people that I like to be around. The type of people that give me energy, I think, is a much smaller category than the type of people that give you energy. You're just like energized by any kind of socializing, and mine has to be like the right kind of person.
Yours is like, there's like 4 of them.
Whatever.
3 or 4 of them.
Whatever.
The right type of person.
Cookie.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like being around people. And I think for that reason, I get nervous around people. It's like the energy either turns into excitement or nerves, but there's an energy there basically always when I'm around people.
Yeah. You're very social.
I think I got that from my dad. He's just like, he loves talking. He loves being in front of people. It's just, you can tell when someone is kind of naturally extroverted because of the way that they're, like the inflections in their voice when they're speaking. Like, he has a very confident way of talking, and he'll go up and down and it just he feels like it's almost like he's more comfortable in front of a crowd than he is one-on-one sometimes.
Right.
And I for sure feel like that in certain situations. Like, I think if I was in front of a crowd versus like on a date, I think sometimes in front of a crowd actually would be easier.
Interesting.
Maybe not now. At some point in my life, that would probably be the case. Because in front of a crowd, it's like, for whatever reason, the stakes sometimes don't feel as high. And this is like, it's weird to even say this because this is only in a specific time period of my life. Now I'm the opposite. Now, like, I don't like speaking in front of crowds. But at the time when I was younger, when I did like doing that, it felt like I had diffused like the responsibility of maintaining an interaction across like a whole group of people. But if it's just you and one other person, then like if you're talking and they're not listening, what do I do now? Or like you're not keeping their attention.
Yeah. Then
you have to look elsewhere, and there's pressure and whatever. But
yeah. Well, it can be exhausting to keep a conversation going.
Yeah, depending on who you're with.
Yeah.
I found that one of the keys to conversation for me is to be okay with it being quiet, especially if you're trying to impress someone. Like if you're going to go ask a girl out on a date or like talk to your boss or whatever, and you're always the one asking and interrogating.
Filling empty spaces with words.
Yeah, it comes across as needy, and it also comes across a lot of times as like an interview. You know, have you ever noticed that, like on dates? Like, oh, hey, so what's your major? Business. Cool. Yeah, how long you been at the U? Cool. Yeah. So what do you think you'll do after school? Cool. Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't like really become a conversation. So if I'm talking to someone and I ask a question and then they answer it and don't like keep the conversation going in any way, usually I'll just wait. I'll just,
Right.
it's like,
Right.
okay, if you're not going to say something, not always, it's not like you're trying to play a power game with them, but I think just naturally it should feel two-sided.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't, you're like, I guess you don't care as much about keeping this going.
Right. Right.
You know?
Well, I have a hard time going off of that with people that aren't as willing to share, like share things about their life.
Yeah.
I've made some friends that I've shared because they've asked questions, and I've been genuinely interested in their friendship, and so I've opened up, and I've been honest about how my life has gone, and not like, I don't know, divulged all of my details, but
Right.
shared things that would make you bond as a friendship. And there's just, when you share those kinds of things, and I don't know if this is right, but when you share those kinds of things, you kind of expect there to be some kind of giving from their end as well, which maybe that's transactional. I don't know. But I get a little bit like, that doesn't feel very good when I share and open up, and then I wait like months of hanging out, and there's just still like, I'll ask questions to follow up or get answers out of them, and they just don't.
No, I completely agree. And I feel like as long as you're not oversharing, I feel like sharing is a very generous thing to do with friends, because it's showing them that you're willing to be vulnerable and you're willing to be seen in front of them.
Right.
And so, yeah, like sharing a little bit about you and like adding a little bit more to their understanding of you each time you share a little bit, it brings you closer. And I have felt that too, like where you share something and then they're just like, oh yeah, okay, like, oh
yeah. Well, and they keep asking like prying questions, and you're okay with it because you're thinking like, oh, we're becoming friends, we're bonding, and then you kind of ask them questions like, have you ever felt this way? Or and it's just like,
yeah.
And then it feels off.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the key to doing that, most likely, and I don't know, but my guess is that like you have to kind of test the waters probably and find out just how much sharing is normal to someone, and then you gauge what they're comfortable with, and then you give and you take a little bit based off of that.
Yeah.
Because I've been really surprised by some people in my life that ended up being, the people who shared the most, or who ended up being the most vulnerable or the most tender.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know, because it's not always that someone's personality isn't that way. A lot of times it's just that they are trained not to divulge.
Yeah.
Like a lot of men have that. They don't like talking about their own feelings. And so they may have very tender feelings, they may be very expressive, but they've never really felt, the push and the permission to be able to actually act on them.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think that I just look at it very transactionally. I feel like we talk about some aspect of us being all or nothing in some kind of category or another every single time we sit down at this microphone. But I think with friends and with like divulging information, I'm a little bit all or nothing. And I've gotten better at it, but growing up, I didn't ever need anybody else as far as like someone to confide in goes. And so I don't think I ever shared really any real part of who I was, like really deep down. I was genuine, I feel like, but I'd never divulged details about my life to anybody. And then I think I got a little bit older, and I really wanted, like, I moved away from my mom. I went on a mission. I went to college. I came home. I got married, and I really wanted to feel that with someone, someone that I could like talk to in person, since I wasn't seeing my mom and my sister all the time. And I think that I went a little too hot and heavy there at first. And I don't know. I think that I'm kind of starting to balance out and learn, maybe don't share that.
Yeah,
But
I've had a similar experience actually. Not the same way. It was more like you have a core group of friends, and then you get older and you move away from them, and you kind of desperately want to feel that same friendship somewhere else. And so, like a close friend I had growing up, I'll move away, and I'll have a friendship with someone else, and I will want to make it into that friendship. So I'll do that same thing. I'll be like, this is in subconscious, like, oh yeah, like me and my friends, we used to always, like, we had this type of relationship where we could just like sleep on each other's couch. And so I just like almost assumed that I could do that.
So you're gonna let me sleep on your couch, right?
Right, exactly. And you do that. I do that not just with actions, but also with like the way that I talk with them.
Right.
I get sometimes more comfortable faster, almost too fast, like you were saying, divulging too much, because I think maybe even my brain thinks that this new person is the same. Yeah. Like you, like a new girl enters in your life, like, oh, this person represents friendship. When I think of friendship, I think of my mom. When I think of my mom, I think of being able to say anything. So now I can say anything to this person.
Yeah.
When probably, that would come organically over time, but you just feel the need to replace, sometimes a hole that you feel from old relationships.
Totally.
Which is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I'm like that in all aspects of friendship, or even relationships at all. Like I will put up with so much, or just like endure painful situations. Like not even that they're hurting me or wronging me or anything, but I'll put up with things that are uncomfortable to me with friendships or relationships for so long, and then I'll just snap one day, and then it's like, yeah, no, I can never talk to you again. And that's not great. That is not great, because they have no notice. That's not love. Like, love is communicating with people. Love is telling someone when something's made you uncomfortable so that they can be on level playing ground and bring to you, like, why they did what they did, and maybe have you see, oh, okay, that wasn't that bad. Right. Like giving them a chance to be your friend, actually. And yeah.
Well, what's easier? Is it easier to be with someone and have things be going wrong, having your relationship with someone, they're wronging you in some way over time, and you never have to face up to that? You just cut it off and leave? Or is it easier to constantly having to have that conflict?
Right.
And I would say that that's a pretty common response. Like you even see that in the workplace, where someone won't be acting, performing their job the way that they should be. And so rather than keeping them accountable constantly over a period of time and ragging on them or whatever, and coming in like, hey, you're not meeting your quota, instead of doing that, then they'll just let it happen until it gets to the point where it's so bad, and then they'll cut it off. Right. And then they don't have to see that person anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's harder to take the little conflict every day and to course correct
definitely
every day than to just say, I can bear this and now I can't.
Yeah. Let
it be gone,
It's hard to think of a scenario, though, where talking or not talking is better than talking.
Right.
Yeah, I really can't think of anything that isn't made better by more communication.
Yeah.
I think you can overcomplicate things, but that's not necessarily what communicating is.
Right. You can overcomplicate, but I don't know if you can over-communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you.
That's one of the lessons I would feel that I've taken from our marriage in the 2 years, is to take the daily discomfort or the long-term resentment.
Definitely.
And it's not like every single day. It's not like we even have any more discomfort or conflict than any other relationship. But it is good if something's not going the way that we feel good about.
Yeah.
To just say it that day, make it uncomfortable today a little bit,
Yeah.
than just be like, you know what, I can't handle this in 5 years. And that's, in my opinion, why people commit adultery, why people, abandon their families or go to drugs or, commit suicide even.
Because they've stopped communicating.
Because they would rather not take the daily conflict of trying to fix something right now and trying to talk through something. And then eventually the daily conflicts add up over time to just something unbearable. And pretty soon you can't handle it.
Yeah.
Or you're not the same person, or you don't feel the same way because you never voiced your opinion throughout.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I think we've formed really good habits, especially for being married for such a short time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't really remember not being married, but it's only been 2 years, and in the scope of life, that's not super long.
Yeah. No, it's not very long at all.
No, but when I think about the examples we have, we've done a pretty good job with learning to say the hard things as they come up, because it's just so much better. It gets resolved quicker. I think that one of the benefits of living in Utah is the road trip to Arizona.
Yeah.
Every month or so, we take a 10-hour road trip to Arizona and a 10-hour road trip back. And those are some of our best talking days. Those have been some of the best days of our marriage, I think. It's just being stuck in a car.
Yeah.
And having hours to just talk about anything and everything, and what hurts and what feels good, and what we want for our lives, and to dream together and to make goals. And I don't know, I think road trips are very healing. And it's just, those have been some of our best days. I remember listening to the Brene Brown book.
Yeah.
The Power of Vulnerability. It was so good, and it was kind of life-changing for us.
Mm-hmm.
We had some of our best conversations that road trip, and we listened to the whole thing that one road trip, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know, it was so easy. Like the walls, it was just like, maybe not easy, but it just seemed so simple. Like, oh, yeah, there's no reason to hang on to any kind of resentment. There's no reason to not say these words.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're really small, but sometimes the smallest things can be the hardest to bring up,
The conversations we had over those road trips, it wasn't just like the fact that we were able to talk about things that were on our mind, but it was also a process of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
It was saying things that we wanted to say. We were stuck with each other. It was being vulnerable, but then it was also, as we had those conversations, we learned more about our relationship together.
Right.
And we learned more about ourselves and more about each other just by speaking it into our view. We hadn't even noticed a lot of things. Like it's because of those types of long conversations that we had that we have made major life plans.
Right.
Like where we want to live and where we want to work. And we've talked about your business.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about doing a podcast. Because I think when something is stuck in your brain, it gets lost with everything else. And you don't know what's important because you dream all kinds of things, but once you've said it, and once it goes from just an idea into actually expressing it to someone else, it's like you can't take it back.
Right.
All of a sudden you put it out into the world. It's out in the universe. And this is the first step.
Yeah. You can't keep it safe and locked up in your mind anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a moment of committal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That first little step. I think that for me, getting married was this really big moment of realization that this was the most important relationship that I've ever had in my life, you know? And I could not fathom ever, even when we were engaged, even like when we were talking about getting married, when we were dating, it became clear very quickly that this was the most important thing that had ever happened to me. And that it was the most valuable thing that I had ever come across and that I had in my life. And the more I like came into that, I think the easier it was for me to be vulnerable, because actually maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it became harder to be vulnerable at first because I was so worried about losing it maybe. And then, you know, I feel like we came to it very quickly in the scope of life and in comparison to other relationships around us, maybe, that in order to like protect those important relationships, you do have to be vulnerable. You do have to let things go that you hold tight to your chest. And I remember when we were like 6 months married, we went to a wedding reception with Rick. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the couple asked us what kind of advice we had for them. And I was like, what? Which is so funny to look back on now, like 6 months. I don't even remember. I think we were married for a year, so it wasn't like that first 6 months. But I mean, it only been a year. Yeah. And I just remember sitting there like, and it must have been like kind of this moment where they were like, oh, shoot. She must not like marriage very much. I don't know. And it was a good question for me, actually. I thought about it for like the rest of that weekend. Like, what advice would I give to a young couple getting married right now after a year of marriage? And I think what I came to was that you just got to remember that you're on the same team. And maybe other people have an easier time with that, but that was really hard for me at first. After we had like gotten through those fun first months, and
sorry, I forgot to set the timer.
No, you're good. After we had like settled into a home, after we had stopped traveling for those couple months, and we started talking about like what we were really gonna do with our life, and realizing like how much our views didn't add up.
Yeah.
It was really difficult at that time period for me to remember that like you were fighting for my future with you, and I was fighting for your future with me, and I think I had armor up to fight for what I wanted and what I thought was right, because I thought that you were going to move on in this direction that didn't include me, because I was so worried about, I had a tight grip on our relationship, you know, I was so worried about losing that. And then I don't know. I feel like that fight in Chicago we had was like a big turning point for me. And I think I still worked on it from then on. But in Chicago is when I realized, like, oh, I have some walls up. And I have brought some things to this marriage that aren't really real. I've brought some misconceptions, and I've brought some past hurt that I didn't even know I had into this marriage that I should probably work on. And I think I would tell every couple to remember that they're on the same team. They wouldn't have married you if they didn't want to figure out life with you. And to read that book, the Brene Brown book. Yeah. I don't know.
That book actually was really huge for us.
Yeah.
One of the biggest lessons that we took from that is kind of what you were saying. Like, something that's so important to you, you feel like, especially a relationship, you want to hold on to a relationship because it's big.
Yeah.
You know, it's your whole life. And so you want to put yourself in the best light.
Right.
Because that's what would seem to be the best thing for the relationship.
Yeah.
It's like, I want my wife to think, you know, that I'm never weak.
Yeah.
And to think that I'm never afraid, and to think that I am the coolest guy, and I have everything always figured out, and I'm rich, and I have plans. And because then she'll love me, and then she'll want to stay with me.
Right.
And it's not even just fear. I mean, that makes it sound like it's crazy and irrational, but everybody does that with their friends, with their parents.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing is, the more that you do that, the less connected you actually feel.
Yeah.
Actually is the opposite of connection. Trying to look cool or trying to come across in a certain way is the fastest way to not being understood. Because then the other person will see it and think, oh man, they don't care enough about me to really show me what they're like. I guess I'm not really worth it.
And I guess that brings it back to what I was talking about earlier with friendships. If you don't feel like you're getting that same thing in return, it can feel wasted and it can feel cheapened. And
it's not transactional, I don't think. I know you said that,
no one ever really wants. And maybe I think you can have different expectations out of a marriage, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, and it wasn't that big of a deal when I experienced this a couple times with friends. It was just like, oh, yeah, that's not a relationship that I really want to divulge more in yet. I'm gonna wait.
Right.
Until I don't know, until I can get a little bit closer to this person, and then we'll see.
Yeah, I felt that, like, when I'm with a friend, sometimes we're both at a place where we're not ready to, like, divulge more of ourselves, and we're both kind of still feeling each other out. And then it's actually a sign of confidence that you can say, okay, I have a little bit of, like, extra self-assuredness.
Yeah.
Let me give a little bit to this person by being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And see if they'll do it in return.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I feel good enough about myself that I want to tell you something that could be seen in a bad light about me.
Right.
I struggle with this, or I'm afraid of this.
Yeah.
And when you do that, when at least that's been done to me, I almost always look at that person with admiration.
I was just thinking the same thing. Like, anytime there's been a difficult or uncomfortable question asked, and like we're in a group setting and someone's like owned up, or someone's like brought forth a very personal story or admitted to something that's difficult, it never makes you think, wow, that was way stupid.
Yeah.
I feel like I've always felt like, man, that is so brave. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
They have so much confidence.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Those are the people that figure it out,
Yeah.
Obviously there's oversharing, but yeah, I was watching, remember when we just like watched those little videos from our honeymoon last night?
Yeah.
It's like the little videos that we made, which was really cute of us.
That
just
was
like
cute of us.
Talking, just showing the hotel tour and driving around Kauai, and it's so funny, like me watching myself realizing like how far we've come.
Yeah.
Like I still had makeup on like all the time. Not all the time, but there are just little things that I noticed that are funny, because I thought that I was like so yours,
Yeah.
like I had given myself to you in every way that I possibly could have at that time. And it's so funny looking back, like, man, that's funny. I'm still like putting on a show.
Yeah.
In little ways.
I mean, I hadn't even farted around you at that point.
Well, you didn't for like an entire year and a half.
Literally a year into our marriage. And I was like, you know what? The time has come.
Is that weird? I feel like that's weird.
I feel like maybe it is as well.
I feel like it was really kind of you.
Well, now
But
you know the monster that you married.
Yeah, you set an expectation that was impossible to keep up.
Yeah. Well, it was actually as funny.
And it makes me sad thinking of all the pain that you were in.
As funny as it is now to talk about it, it really was an interesting symbol of our relationship, to where I could finally fart around you. It was like, I'm really showing you who I am, and I'm not as afraid.
Well, this is the last thing.
This is it. Honeymoon's over, babe.
Yeah. No, that's funny. I had completely forgotten about the farting thing.
I know. It is funny.
Oh, man. You did that for a long fine. Bless your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I did still fart. I just didn't do it around you.
Yeah, not in front of me. Now you just let loose. So
Now I just go ham.
you go ham. Jackknife and all. I don't know. It was just cute watching. It wasn't like this feeling where I was ashamed of myself, because I really did feel like I was actively.
Like I said, it's a process of discovery.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. It was a really good feeling yesterday watching, like, oh man, like I really do love this man, and I've really like made a life with him and shown him every part of me, and I think it's awesome.
Well, it's courageous to be vulnerable, and that it's like when you give someone the gift of yourself, then they can actually love you. But it's very like cowardly, I think.
Yeah.
It's easy for anyone to pretend. Well, it's not easy. It takes effort, but it's easy as far as the risk of pain goes to just act like you're always perfect.
Yeah.
And never let anyone in feels easier than letting someone in and then having them not like you.
Right.
But the ironic thing is if you don't show vulnerability, then you'll never actually connect. So there's not any point.
Yeah. No, you can't have a whole relationship with half of yourself on the table.
Yeah. I've gone through periods of time where I had to like remember who I was pretending to be.
Right.
Yeah. Where it's like, let's say I went on a date with a girl. She's like, oh, I really liked you. The next time we go on a date, I'm like, oh man, she said she really liked me. I want her to like me. Who was I? How did I act? And then like all of a sudden, you're with your friends or whatever, and I'm goofing off and being silly. And I'm like, oh no, she's here.
Oh crap.
She hasn't seen this part of me. She's not going to like this. And then like you see that, there's a gif of Kanye where he's like smiling and then he notices the camera. And it's that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you're trying to be cool, you're always trying to remember like what cool is and wait, what do I like and how do I dress? Mm-hmm. And it's just like a peaceful, liberating feeling it's not that you don't care what people think, but it's that you are confident that you're giving them the real deal. Mm-hmm. So if they don't like it, there's not really much you can do.
Right.
It's like if you're giving someone your facade and they don't like it, you try a different one.
I think that it'll be beautiful in 2 more years to look back and see like what we were still holding on to at this point.
Oh yeah. There's for sure things that we're still holding on to, and I know it. And like, not only are you holding on to it in your relationship, but it's sometimes things are so vulnerable that you're keeping it from yourself. Like, I don't want to divulge something, so like I won't even think it. All right, it's a fear or an insecurity so deep that you don't even want to acknowledge it.
Right.
And by not acknowledging it, you probably actually make it worse.
Yeah.
Because it kind of feeds in the dark.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel really good about the habits that we've formed. And it's confidence building, knowing that we've evolved this much in this amount of time, that we're going to be able to talk about whatever comes our way, whatever it is that we're keeping safe to our chest. I think that we'll be all right.
That's what I imagine as like the ultimate expression of love and the ultimate freeing lifestyle is to live with someone who's being unapologetically themselves, courageously, and putting it all out there for the world to destroy, and someone else who's different, who's also being unapologetically themselves, and they both can just coexist and be free and like
Yeah.
do the things that they like, even though they may not like the same things. And you can say kind of whatever you want without risk of being judged. Because if you're acting exactly the way that you really are, which I'm not saying I've ever done that, but I feel like I've had moments of that. Like you feel like when you're in your space, you're talking about something that you're passionate about maybe.
Yeah.
You feel like you're really being yourself. It takes away a lot of insecurities. Like it takes away the insecurity that people won't like what you say, or you won't sound smart, or you won't be cool or whatever, because if you really do speak your truth, then like it doesn't matter. None of that matters.
Yeah. I anticipate for us in the next couple years, the growth that we do in that category won't be as between you and me, but between us and the world.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, maybe you have skeletons in the closet I don't know about, but
right.
I think it's going to be more of like me building up confidence enough with someone that I love, like having practiced those habits with someone that I totally could lose, you know, and having, you know, building that trust with you that enough that I can actually go out and start my business for real, you know, or you like actually throwing everything into a podcast that's going to make your dreams come true, you know? I don't know. That's what I anticipate happening. But
I think that we have a whole slew of new insecurities that are going to come when we have a baby.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because that like opens Pandora's box to childhood, you know, and to feelings that maybe we've never expressed or understood based on how our parents raised us.
Yeah. No, that's actually very true. I was not thinking about that. Kind of forgot for a second that we were having a baby.
Right?
That's huge.
Yeah. And like you might do something that reminds me of something my parents did that I hated, or vice versa.
Yeah. Or, you know, I might do something that reminds you of my parents that is uncomfortable. Is uncomfortable to you because of the way you were raised, and vice versa. I don't know. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's going to be rough.
We got a lot coming.